Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking that daily barrage of economic news you see everywhere, and we're finally giving it a proper mental filing cabinet. We're going to build a framework together that helps you instantly categorize whether a headline about inflation, jobs, or growth is just a short-term blip, a massive long-term trend, or, something right in between.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the macroeconomic big picture. Then we'll examine the economy through three distinct time horizons: the very long run, and the short run. Let's get going.
Section 1. The macroeconomic big picture. Before we even touch on time horizons, we kind of have to look at the foundational curiosities that drive this entire field. Like, why did a payphone call cost a dime in 1933, but 50 cents in 2010? Well, assuming you could even find a functioning payphone in 2010, right? Or let's look at the labor market. In 1933, bread lines were everywhere. Decades later, around 2006, jobs were incredibly plentiful. But then, fast forward just a few years to 2010, and jobs were agonizingly scarce again. Why? Why are jobs everywhere some years and nowhere in others? What is actually driving up prices over time? These aren't just abstract academic puzzles. These are the core, real-world questions macroeconomists try to answer so we can actually understand and hopefully improve the world we live in. And that brings us perfectly to our definition. Macroeconomics looks at the behavior of the economy as a whole. See, microeconomics looks at the intricate details, individual households, specific firms, or really niche markets, like the price of medical services or a Rembrandt painting. But macroeconomics, it deliberately abstracts those details away. We just bundle everything together. We're looking at the big interactions across the entire goods market, the entire labor market, and the entire assets market. And the whole benefit of zooming out like this is that it lets us see the massive interactions that actually dictate the wealth of a whole nation. So, to make sense of all these massive interactions, economists rely on three time horizon models. Think of these like three different zoom levels on a camera lens, all pointed at the exact same economy. Depending on how far you zoom in or out, you're going to see a completely different set of rules governing the landscape. It's wild. We have the very long run, and the short run. Let's start by zooming all the way out. Section 2, the very long run. Putting on our widest possible camera lens, check out the per capita GMP in the United States from 1890 to 2009. Notice that perfectly smooth upward historical trend? When you look at an economy over decades and decades, the sudden bumps, crashes, recessions, they basically disappear. They just average right out. And what you're left with is a surprisingly reliable average annual growth rate of about 2 to 3%. In this wide-angle time-lapse, the model just assumes that all resources, labor, capital, raw materials, are fully employed. The chaotic ups and downs of unemployment, totally ignored, because again, they wash out over time. So what actually matters through this lens? Honestly, all that matters is how quickly an economy's productive capacity grows on average. This domain, which is called growth theory, focuses squarely on two things: the historical accumulation of capital, like investing in new machinery, and improvements in technology. Those two things are the absolute engines of the very long run. Now, you might be wondering, does it really matter if an economy grows at 2% a year instead of 4%? I mean, 2% sounds tiny, right? Well, the answer is a massive, resounding yes. To put that into perspective, over 100 years, a 4% growth rate produces a standard of living that is literally 7 times higher than an economy growing at a 2% rate. 7 times! This is the difference between a country experiencing a genuine growth miracle, like Japan's crazy 8% annual growth after the war, and a country suffering from long-term economic stagnation. The savings and sacrifices we make today literally dictate the standard of living for our great-grandkids.
Section 3, the long run.
Okay, let's adjust our camera lens and zoom in just a bit. If the very long run is a time-lapse video, the long run is just a single snapshot taken from that video at a specific moment in time. And because it's just a snapshot, those massive, slow-moving forces we just talked about, the capital stock, the level of technology, they can be treated as relatively fixed. You can't invent the internet overnight, right? Because those things are fixed, they determine the absolute maximum productive capacity of the economy at that exact moment. Economists call this the potential output. Now, what's really fascinating here is the aggregate supply, or AS, curve. It's completely vertical. It sits exactly at the point of the economy's potential output. Think of it like a brick wall. Because capacity is largely fixed in this snapshot, the supply of goods and services is locked in.
No matter how much people want to buy, the economy simply cannot produce more than this vertical limit. It is tapped out.
So if output is totally pegged to that vertical supply wall, what happens to prices? Well, imagine mentally shifting aggregate demand higher. If demand goes up, it simply slides right up that vertical supply wall. Output doesn't change, we can't make any more stuff, but the price level shoots up. So the crucial takeaway for the long run is that large-scale inflation is driven entirely by fluctuations in demand against a totally fixed supply capacity.
Section 4, the short run. All right, let's zoom the camera all the way in. We're talking high-speed action camera now. Welcome to the short run. This is the actual timeline you and I live our daily lives in. This is the domain of sudden fluctuations, the immediate turbulence of booms, and terrifying recessions. And the crazy thing is, the rules here are flipped completely upside down from the long-run model we just looked at. Down here, output is highly variable and prices are relatively fixed.
So the absolutely crucial point here is understanding this exact contrast. In the long run, we had fixed capacity and completely flexible prices, which causes inflation. But in the short run, it's the exact opposite. We have fixed prices and entirely flexible output.
Now, why on earth are prices fixed in the short run? Well, because in the real world, prices are sticky. Think about it. A coffee shop doesn't change the price of your latte every single hour just because the morning rush ended, right? So if prices are temporarily stuck and aggregate demand suddenly plummets, what happens? The quantity of goods produced drops, factories idle, and crucially, horribly, people are laid off. Fluctuations in demand in the short run dictate exactly how much of our available capacity is actually used. And boom, that brings us right back to our initial hook. Why are jobs plentiful in some years and scarce in others? Simple. It's a short-run demand issue.
Let's move to and see how all of this builds into the ultimate, hotly debated question of macroeconomics. Can the government, and more importantly, should the government, step in to intervene and improve the economy? Great thinkers from Keynes to Friedman to Lucas, they all fought bitterly over this. Because the short run is where the real-world pain of unemployment is actually felt, this is the realm where policy is most fiercely debated. Do we just let the market adjust naturally over the long run, or do we step in with active policy to fix that short-run pain?
The beautiful, if sometimes pretty untidy, synthesis of all this is that macroeconomics isn't just one static rulebook. The economy we actually live in is this constant, dynamic overlap of all three time horizons happening at once. When we look at the economy, we aren't just picking one model because it's our favorite. We have to realize that the correct model depends entirely on the specific time frame we're trying to analyze. So, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder. Knowing that economic reality completely shifts based on the time frame from the sticky prices and unemployment of the short run all the way to the inevitable technological march of the very long run, which of these lenses should our policymakers focus on when they're deciding to intervene? Do we sacrifice short-run stability for long-run growth, or is it the other way around? Keep that in mind the absolute next time you read a headline. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you next time.